everyone, and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video with myself and Sloth today. Something a little bit different, some news coming out or rumours coming out that, someone, maybe a forgotten man at West Ham at the moment, Ben Johnson, looks like he wants to stay, and it looks like we might be giving him a contract extension. Again, this is all rumours at the moment and there's nothing concrete, but Ben Johnson is a name we thought we'd, speak about because, it wasn't that long ago that he was, one of the best fullbacks at the club. He can operate on the left side of defense. He can operate on the right. He's played in a back three. So is it surprising how he's kind of recently just been frozen out? There's been times where he's not even in the squad and it just doesn't look like he's getting back into the team at the moment.
I think it's surprising how dramatically his form has dropped off. I'd say that's the main bone of contention, because we've seen some fantastic performances from him individually, and they've been all too few and far between. That's the words I was trying to say.
Yeah.
All too few and far between. And unfortunately, it's just, if we're going to be going towards competing in Europe, and if we're going to be trying to get towards the higher end of the table, you need players who are more consistent than that. And it's nothing against him as a player. Personally, I think he's a solid enough option. And if you're asking me who I'd rather play at the moment in terms of that left back spot, then I'm picking Johnson 100% over Cresswell, because he's got something to play for, and he's younger, he's quicker, and he's an academy product.
It might actually be that Ben Johnson does come back in for the next game, because Emerson's now suspended after the Aston Villa game. So it's whether Cresswell's going to be back fit in time. And then, what other options do we really have? We can put a Gerd left back. We've tried Kehrer left back. It doesn't work. Ben Johnson's a natural pick. So it could be that he gets his luck, and he actually gets back into that team. And it could be the start of his, West Ham revival, if you want to call it that, because that's what it would be at this point. He's just been completely frozen out. He's not even really getting picked into rotation in Europe games. And it's interesting that he still wants to stay at the club, if that is if the rumors are said to be true, because he has been frozen out and he's suffered from it. He was England under-21 international, regularly playing for them, and now he's just kind of not even getting in the West Ham team. So with his contract as well, it's an interesting situation, because like you mentioned, he's a homegrown talent. He's still relatively young, and he's a good backup option to have in the squad. So his contract expires, or is set to expire, in this summer coming up. So how would you be assessing Ben Johnson at the moment? Would you be wanting him to stay at the club if you were kind of in charge of that?
Look, I always want young homegrown and academy players to stay at the club, but it has to have that caveat of they're good enough.
Yeah.
And we have seen glimpses, but as I said, we've just not seen enough in terms of his overall ability. And that's the frustrating thing. That's the thing that makes me sad. It's that I think if we were talking about potentially giving a player a first contract, or giving them, say, £25,000 a week, wages that aren't Premier League level almost, but they're fringe player wages, I think I'd be a lot more inclined to say, yeah, it's something we should be doing. However, I just think there's so many good options out there. There's so many potential bargains.
Yeah.
And it's something that I would use this chance, if that left back spot becomes available this week, to say to him, look, this is your chance to play yourself in. And if you do that, if you can consistently do that, force your way into some sort of reckoning, then we'll give you a contract. But he's got to earn it. And it's football is surely one of the toughest professions in terms of earning that contract and like justifying those wages because they're such big amounts of money. But as a young player coming through, the ball's entirely in his court because who else are we going to pick at that left back spot? I don't particularly want to see Cresswell there. It's two opposite ends of the spectrum. It's a player who is aging and doesn't really want to be here against a player who is young, fighting for another contract and wants to stay. So who do you go with?
I think for me, it's also interesting because, you know, we talk about Ben Johnson and he came through the ranks, like we mentioned, similar time to Declan Rice, really, just a little bit after that. And, you know, he did establish himself in that team. And, you know, he deserved what he kind of got from that because he was performing really, really well. I mean, even in our European campaign, the first year of Europe, he was excellent. And, you know, his best position is still arguable whether he can play left back or right back, what his best position is, just because he is naturally pretty good with both feet, which is you know, a big advantage, I would say, in the kind of modern game, because a lot of players aren't, you know, that versatile with both feet. So he has that to his advantage. Defensively, that was always his best, you know, point when he was playing at left back or right back, is he was very tough to beat in a one-on-one. And, you know, he brought a lot of defensive solidity to what we were trying to do under Moyes under that time. So I think it's when we started to try and progress a little bit more that it got a little bit more exposed for maybe his lack of attacking capabilities. I know he scored that goal against Aston Villa that one time, and, you know, I think it took all of us by surprise because that just wasn't the type of player he was. You know, he wasn't amazing going forwards. And now we've got Emerson, who's, you know, the complete polar opposite to what Ben Johnson is. You know, he will attack, he will overlap. He's very good technically at making those runs in between the lines and, you know, overlapping and, you know, interchanging. There's a lot of different offensive, you know, attributes Emerson has. But I would still say Johnson defensively is probably better than Emerson. I mean, maybe on par with him. So maybe not recent form, but, you know, we can't really forget what Johnson has done because he was very, very good for us for a long time. You know, he really was really solid for us. And yes, he hasn't been amazing recently, and, you know, he hasn't really taken his chances when he had them in recent games where he has played. So, like you mentioned, you have to earn that contract, and that's what this, you know, whole video is about. Does he deserve that contract? Are we surprised at it? Because there are going to be options out there, and, you know, Kufau as well is another one who's going to be under threat next summer because, you know, fullbacks are something we've neglected for a long time. It's kind of luck how Emerson's, you know, started to turn out well this season. So I can see there being big changes in the fullback departments this summer. I mean, there has to be some fresh ideas, especially on the right side. So where does that leave Ben Johnson? Because, like I said, he is out of contract this summer. You know, whether we're going to extend that or whether we're going to give him a new contract, that is the big question. So for you, Sloth, what's the biggest advantage for us, you know, keeping Johnson, other than kind of the homegrown status? Do you see him, you know, eventually getting back into this team? Because the squad is slowly starting to build up as well. We've got Kehrer, Mavropanos, you know, we've got a lot of defensive options now. How does he slot himself back into that squad?
I think it's incredibly difficult. I think it will be. We've sat here a couple of times and kind of said about how he this is his chance. Or you look at the Lyon game where he came in and he was fantastic. You know, he was probably he was one of the men of the match in that games.
Yeah.
However, it just doesn't seem to have happened for him. Whether that's his fault, whether it's the fact that as soon as players come back, he seems to be the one who is dropped, I think has knocked his confidence. But again, those are the challenges you face as a professional footballer. And look, we know Moyes has players who he trusts. If he clearly trusts Cresswell, then Johnson has to know that he has to be ready to be that understudy. For me, I think, as you said, the defensive element of his game is his strong point, and he also has that added bonus of a bit more pace than Cresswell. And for me, I think the homegrown element is huge. You know, we kind of mentioned removing that, but I think at the moment, if you were asking me, do I get rid of him and do I bring in someone like Maatsen from Chelsea, then yeah, I definitely do, because I think that you've got a player who is from a renowned academy, just like Johnson is. However, is much hotter off the press of a good season, a good full season, whereas Johnson hasn't ever really had a full season under his belt where we've just gone, wow, that's really impressive. So I think for him to come in and compete with Emerson, I think he'd be a lot more open to that than perhaps Johnson is, who has played games and thought, I really should be in this side. The only issue with that deal is cost. So where do I see Johnson's future? Personally, I think we probably see him go at the end of the season. I think if Moyes isn't phasing him into the team now, he probably won't do anyway.
Yeah.
And
I think this could be his last chance if he does get in at the weekend for the Everton match over Cresswell. If Cresswell's still injured or whatever, I think that is his chance. You know, he has to take that because, you know, Emerson's going to come back the next week and, you know, go straight into the team. So for Ben Johnson to get himself at least back into the squad as an option, he has to perform against Everton. It's as simple as that. So yeah, I mean, for me, like we've sat here on this channel and spoke about Ben Johnson many times, and I remember having the argument in the summer window with Mike saying, you know, I would rather sell Johnson than Kufau at the moment, just because of the performances and just the big dip of Johnson. It's such a shame because he was, you know, doing really, really well for us, and obviously a homegrown boy, you know, you love to see those kind of players come through. So I think for me, this is really his last chance. It's harsh, but like you mentioned, that's football. You know, you have to take your chance when it's, you know, such high pressure, high stake environment. So yeah, I think if he does get his chance against Everton, that will probably be it in terms of his maybe future at the club and whether he's going to get that new contract. But yeah, how do you see that stuff? Could you see that being the case as well?
I think that's got to be it. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if he just doesn't get picked. I wouldn't be surprised if Cresswell starts, which would really disappoint me, to be honest, because I don't think he deserves it. I don't think he should be in the squad. And I, as I said, would much rather give a chance to an academy product who actually wants to be here than someone who tried to force a move away. So I do think it's last chance for Saloon for Johnson. I could even potentially see us moving him on in January if there's a decent offer on the table. But as you say, this is very much his chance if he's brought into the side.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the contract, whether anything progresses, and we'll keep you informed if it does. And yeah, let us know what you think about Ben Johnson in the comments, because it's a name that isn't really spoken about much anymore. But he was a big part of what we did in Europe a couple of seasons ago and also in the Premier League. So yeah, let us know in the comments what you would do with Ben Johnson, whether you'd keep him, whether he, you know, deserves that chance on Saturday against Everton, or Sunday, should I say. And yeah, maybe gets that new contract under his belt. But that's going to be all for today. Leave a like on the video. As always, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you are new around here, as that massively helps us out. And Sloth, until the next video.
Come on, you irons.